Welcome to You Must Be Woken, the podcast where we have honest and sometimes tough conversations on the topic of inclusion, leadership and culture.
And today we're continuing our special International Women's Day mini-series. This year the global theme is Give to Gain, the idea that when we invest our time, power or resources, we create a multiplier effect.
But here on the pod, we're looking at the full picture and having the honest conversation. Behind every gain is usually a give. Sometimes it's a sacrifice or a hard lesson. Other times it's an investment that pays off in ways that we perhaps never expected. We want to see the receipts for both, the costs and the breakthroughs.
And as you know, throughout this series, we're talking to leaders who we've worked with for many years, who've navigated these trade-offs and found the growth on the other side. And I'm delighted today that we have Sam Brook, Group HR Director at Severfield Field PLC currently, joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
Good. Now, before we get into the messy stuff, we have a woking tradition for this series, which is the 60-second CV. So you've got 1 minute to tell us who you are, what you do, the high gloss version.
Okay.
No pressure, Sam. 60 seconds.
No pressure. So I'm Samantha Brook. I'm a people and culture leader, and I have been a long-term advocate of fair and inclusive workplaces, particularly in those industries where women are still underrepresented. Over the last 30 years, I've worked across energy, global chemical manufacturing and construction. And about the last 15 years of those have been at an executive level, leading large-scale people transformations through periods of growth, through periods of crisis, and through periods of change. Most recently, I'm the Group HR Director for one of the UK's largest structural steel and engineering companies and construction businesses, where I've helped reshape the culture, strengthen the leadership pipeline, and build sustainable talent pipelines. I would say what drives me is helping people realise their potential. That's as much driven from my family beliefs and my family life as it is my work. And I believe organisations work best when people feel heard, they're treated fairly, and they're genuinely supported. Alongside my day job, I chair the Future of Work Committee for the Confederation of British Industry, at a time I think it's fair to say when we are seeing the biggest change in employment regulations in a generation. So that's me.
Amazing. Look at that. 60 seconds on the nose as well. And that's what we would call, Sam, the glossy CV, the one that gets you the keynote speeches, gets you into the work councils, all of those good things. What our listeners really want to know, though, is if you'd had a really rubbish Tuesday and you met Dawn and I for a glass of wine at 7 p.m. To catch up, how would that change? How would you describe your CV in that scenario?
Wow, you probably wouldn't want me to say. I think if I look back and look at my career in that scenario, it goes, okay, so where are you at and how did you get there? I think I would probably say it's been bloody hard won. It's required a lot of sacrifice. It's required juggling and organisational skills, and I think multitasking on a level that no human being should probably ever have to endure for the length of time. And it's come at a cost, and it's come at a cost mainly to my health, but it's been an absolute roller coaster. My CV has been an absolute roller coaster. There's been so many challenges, but I'd absolutely do it again. I've been lucky to work all over the world. I've worked with some amazing people. I've had the privilege of working with some brilliant teams, and in lots of small ways, been able to impact how individuals experience work. So hard won and fulfilling, and enjoy it, even though it's been exhausting.
Love that. And I love the fact that you said, I'd do it all over again.
I know, it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love that. We were having a really interesting conversation last week, weren't we? And I want to take us to the then versus now question. So looking back at when you first stepped into the boardroom, what was the price that women were expected to pay just to be in the room? And as we sit here in 2026, what's the biggest change you've seen in what we have to give up?
Yeah. Wow. I think even if you'll probably remember this, Dawn, if you go even back further to when I first kind of started out in my career, I mean, you had a dress code, and that dress code told you how long your skirt was allowed to be, and it told you the type of shoes you were able to wear. So if I look back over that sort of 25 to 30 years and the latter part of it, I think the price women paid was conformity. Feels there's a sense of conformity that you were more careful about when you spoke. You you had to think about how forcibly you spoke. You knew, I think inherently knew there was less room for error. You know, you had to be on it and be on it all the time. And I think if I think back maybe 15 years, probably the biggest change I see is you absorb the poor behavior, and you kind of, I think things that would be called out today and things that wouldn't be tolerated today, that you just absorbed it. You were the only woman in the room. So that was really difficult for you to call that out potentially. So I think you kind of absorbed that. And I introduced myself as Samantha, and people know me as Sam. And the reason I always introduce myself as Samantha is many a time I would attend external meetings, and if there'd been an invitation to Sam Brook, then particularly I had a few occasions I would turn up with a junior male colleague, and the instant reaction was that the male was the Sam, and they would be the hand shook first, the, oh, hello, Sam, great to meet you. And I'd be stood there going, well, no, actually, that's me. So I always introduce myself as Samantha, because if my email footer says Sam, people will assume it's a man, even now, still going on. So I think there's lots of things like that that's gone on. And so I think if I look at what's changed now, I think women do have a voice. I think they are being heard. I see that next generation, they're braver to speak out and call things out, and they do, and they tolerate less of the bad behaviour. But I still think we've got a long way to go, but I can see that shift.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? I can relate to a lot of what you're saying there. Absolutely. It's interesting. The theme of dress code is following through a lot of the people we've interviewed for Women's Day, and it would be my top one too. So interesting.
Yeah, it's that being yourself thing, isn't it? You kind of, that, as I said, conformity.
Yeah, absolutely.
When do you think it started to change? I'm really interested. Being a male in this environment, it's difficult for me to kind of pinpoint the time. But when do you think it started to shift? And do you think there was a sense of pressure on you to be the ones to change it? So, I know this is going to sound like a really silly question, but I think I know what I'm trying to say here. But at some point, it was the women that had to make the changes, right? It was you that had to push through and I don't know, pull a chair out for other people or whatever that looked like. So at what point do you think in the last decade or so, do you think the needle really started to move and you could sense this moment of turn? Even if we're not there yet, there was a shift, right?
Yeah, there was. And it's interesting because I was thinking about this, kind of going, I look at female colleagues coming up beneath me, who may be 10 years younger than me, and think, God, I wish I'd been as confident or as brave as they are when I was their age. And you kind of go, but there was little things we were doing that was making it possible for them to be that now. I think it's probably a post-COVID thing. It feels very recent, and I wonder if COVID kind of really shifted the expectations about how work can be, and I think it shifted the expectations for men as well. I think there was a lot of men who kind of at that point went, you know what, I've had time at home, I've had time with my family, I've done things in a different way to what I've done before, and kind of go, well, it's got to be better. So I think it's probably a reasonably kind of 4 or 5 years thing where I've really seen that significant shift.
Nice. Wow. Okay, that's interesting that it was that close. Although
maybe that's the industry.
Who would say COVID was 5 or 6 years ago, though, right? It feels like it was like last month.
Yeah, and it may be because of the industries being that predominantly more male-dominated, sort of your manufacturing, shift-based work kind of industries, that maybe it's a bit of a lag effect there as well.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I'm really conscious that the theme of this year's International Women's Day, as Dawn said, is give to gain. So tell us about a specific moment where you were either given a seat that you perhaps didn't think you were ready for, or maybe a time when you've pulled out a seat for somebody else, and what was the breakthrough in that?
Yeah, I think, I've experienced that from both sides, and I've had leaders give to me earlier in my career, and you don't probably realize it at the time that that's what's happening. So I've been given projects on a global scale that were way out of my comfort zone, way out of my comfort zone. And I think there's times where I've backed women and pushed them probably further than they feel comfortable for. But again, you don't realize that's necessarily what you're doing. And I think my experience, if I talk about that, was I'd just returned from maternity leave. And anybody that's returned from maternity leave knows you haven't got a clue who you are at that point. You don't know who you are, what you don't do. You don't know what way's up. You just haven't got a clue. And I just returned from maternity leave, and I was asked to lead a project to roll out and develop a global grading structure across 4,000 colleagues across 34 countries. I had never done job evaluation in my life. We had
no pressure.
No pressure. We had no money to spend, so there was no big consultancies with a nice defined model just waiting in the wings to go, here you go, this is what you do. And the business had gone through a major acquisition, and I had a cross-functional project team of 16, of which 8 of the people I had never met, and they'd come from a completely different business. So
wow,
there was an element of going, I have not got a clue. And I think if I look back on that period now and go, God, did I feel imposter syndrome? Jesus, yeah, yes, I did. Yes. Was I out of my depth? Absolutely. Most days I felt out of my depth. Did I panic and worry about it and all the time? But I worked unbelievably hard. And yes, there was wobbles. Yes, there were tears. But it was that kind of realization when you reflect on it now that somebody else believed in my potential.
Yeah.
It was that kind of small act that they thought I was capable of doing that. Whereas I never would have thought, if somebody had come along and you're straight back with a 1-year-old trying to decide what day of the week it is, and somebody goes, off you go, we need you to do this at the same time. So I think it's those small acts of supporting people from behind and giving people those career opportunities. And they may seem really insignificant at the time, but it's only now when you look back, you realise what that person did for you. And I can see the times where I've done that for others by just sort of guiding them, giving them the nudge, sponsoring them, giving them the opportunities for them to realise their potential as well. So yeah, it happens, but I don't think people necessarily realise that is what's happening.
Yeah, that's a really good insight around that, not realizing that that's happening a lot of the time. There's quite a lot of talk these days, I think, in workplaces about the younger generation having a sense of entitlement, right? And I think there's an element of truth in that, but I also think there's an element of ignorance in that as well that says, is it about entitlement, or have we just educated people differently? Is the world different now to perhaps what it was 20 years ago? So to your earlier point about women having it a bit easier, yes, they have it a bit easier. They're willing to challenge because we've educated them that way, right? We've created a world where actually that's different. And I always ponder that question. Is it entitlement? Is it education? Or actually, is it just a mixture of all three? There's probably an element of truth in all of that. Yeah. And I guess that point about opportunities and realizing whether you're getting those opportunities in the moment is a big one, because it adds to that thinking as well, right?
I think the whole kind of younger sort of Gen Z piece, I think you're right. It comes across to the older generations of entitlement and impatience.
Yeah.
But our approach of, well, you serve your time, you earn your stripes, is coming across in the reverse. There's a lack of investment and a lack of interest in their development. So I think it's just a friction there, because you're right. I think we've educated and developed a younger generation in a different way. But yeah.
And I think that comment in terms of it being easier, I think it's different, not necessarily easier. And I think the requirements are different. When I first entered a boardroom, you had to be a total bitch. And it was the only way you got heard. It's the reality. And it was the only language at the time that could get heard. So
Yeah.
to now have an environment where we can be much more consultative and reflective and inclusive, I just think it's different. I think the younger generations have learnt a different skill set.
They're much more willing to challenge it, right? So to your earlier point about uniforms and all of this kind of stuff, and you having to absorb that, the younger generation don't feel they do have to absorb that anymore, right? They're saying, no, well, we're going to challenge that. It's not acceptable. And I love that. I think that's a real demonstration of how the world has shifted. And so, yeah, for me, I think that's really powerful. Nice. I love that. Thank you.
So let's lighten the mood a bit. Shall we play a game? We're at the Woking audit stage, and this is what we talk about. Craig and I are going to list some things that leaders often give to get ahead, and you tell us, Sam, if you'd keep it because it made you who you are, or you'd refund it because it wasn't worth the cost. So keep or refund.
You've probably got a list of your own as well, to be fair, to add to our couple. Let's start with the 5 a.m. start then, to get ahead of the inbox or to just get a jump on the day. Would you keep it or refund it?
Keep it. I think, keep it. I think it's the only way that, particularly if you're a working parent, you can make it work. You've got to juggle it somehow. So I'd probably keep it. Nice. For my own sanity.
That. Moving your new life to a new city for a promotion.
I'd refund it, but I've never done it. I've always been very proud of my Yorkshire roots and building my career in the north, so I've never moved for a promotion, and I've built my career around where I live, so it would be a refund because it's never happened.
Nice. Love that. And then the next one is filtering your personality or toning it down for the boardroom. I'm conscious we've spoken about this already, but would you keep it or refund it?
I refund it. I think, refund it, I would say, because I think it comes at a cost. So, refund that one.
Nice.
Love it. And the last one is working through a family vacation because only you can do that task.
God. I would, oh God, when you kind of go practice what you preach, but I'd probably keep it. I've been lucky enough that I've always developed my teams and had a team that are strong enough that they don't need you. But if they do, I've always said, call me. It's rare I ever get interrupted, but there will be times at a senior level where you may need to be. So I'm kind of keeping a little bit of it, but not all the time. I've never been. I'm on the fence, but I'm kind of begrudgingly on the fence.
Sam, Dawn and I are very similar to you, right? We never practice what we preach in this area. We tell everyone else to just switch off and go on holiday, and then we never do it ourselves.
We get more done on holiday.
It comes down to passion, though, doesn't it? I think if you're passionate about what you do, it's not that you kind of don't trust others to do it, but you're passionate about it. I'm on the fence a little bit.
Love it. Brilliant.
So let's carry on this theme of the next generation. And so if we've got young women listening who is being told she has to give it all to be a leader, what's the one thing she should refuse to give up, no matter how big the gain is?
I think it's hard. It's hard to choose one thing. I think the one thing for me would be whatever's important to you personally, and that is going to differ. That is going to differ from person to person. And I think everybody's going to have a red line. And if I look back to my experience, my red line was my daughter. She was 2 years old when I took my first number one HR role. And I remember being told by a male non-executive director, talking FTSE 250 here, that in no uncertain terms, that role would be incredibly difficult to make a success of it and do it in 4 days a week. And I remember saying to the guy, well try me. And that was my red line. I was very clear that one day was so precious to me to spend at home with my daughter that if I couldn't have it, I wasn't going to take the role. And that was it. It wasn't a negotiation about salary or anything else. It was that one day. so I think it's whatever is important to you personally, and that will differ by person, but you'll know where your own line is.
Nice. I love that. And then I just want to focus just before we get into the kind of home straight of this pod. I want to talk about giving back a little bit because, as Dawn said at the beginning, we've worked with you for a number of years now, Sam, in a variety of different ways. But most recently, you've been investing in a female mentoring program in your sector, which has had rave reviews, right? So we should say that as well. You've had some really great press on the back of this work, and from our perspective, seeing you give in that space has been huge for us as well, and there's been, we've seen how that project has kind of grown arms and legs as a result of that. But tell us why that investment was the right one for you at the time.
Yeah, I think, as I said at the start, we're a steel fabrication, steel construction business, predominantly male dominated. I think when we started the program, about 8% of our headcount was female. And I could see at the time we had lots of brilliant females in the business, but they just weren't getting on the lists for the programs. They weren't getting talked about. They were doing amazing jobs, working unbelievably hard. And I could see they had stacks of potential, and they just needed to be given that opportunity to shine a little bit. And so the program with EA and you guys was about how do we give them that opportunity so that they can just focus on themselves, get themselves sort of thinking about their own wants, what do they need out of their career, build that confidence a little bit more so they can go after whatever it is that they want. And I think if I look back over the number of years we've been running the program, I mean, the impact has been huge. I mean, we've got the stats. We've gone from 8% to 10% female population, which isn't massive growth, but it's big for an industry like ours. I think if you look at the levels where we've got sort of your middle management professional specialists, we've seen a 375% increase in females at the level. You can get big percentages when you start with tiny numbers, I get that. But even at senior leadership, we've seen a 120% increase in females as well. So we've got that. We're retaining over 90% of our identified female talent. So really good in terms of what we're seeing from the stats. But for me, it's not about, they're all great, but they're not the big takeaway. It's seeing the growth in the women themselves, which is more impactful for me. And there's one that stands out who, she'd been with the business about 17 or 18 years. She'd moved around in roles at a similar level. Whenever she was asked to do something more or different, she'd do it, but it was all kind of at the same level. And she came back a year after completing the program to speak to the next cohort as they were closing out on theirs. And she stood in front of the group and she spoke very, very eloquently. A point that she said, I wouldn't have even been able to stand in front of a group and do this had it not been for the program. So that was a big thing in the first place for her. But she talked so eloquently about how she had had a promotion, how she'd done another qualification, and that she just wouldn't have even thought or even pushed for any of those things if it hadn't been for the program. And her biggest takeaway had been that her career was her responsibility. And if she wanted it, she needed to go after it. And just to see her standing there 12 months on with all of that was just, that for me is the impact, regardless of the stats. It was that.
I love that people impact. I'm a big fan of data and stats though too. So I do love those backing up impact stats. So that 120% at leadership, that's sung to me. So I love that.
I was going to say, Dawn. Dawn's our impact person on the pod. She's always one picking out the right stats and this, that, and the other. So
I'll email you.
I love that. Yeah, definitely. That's huge, isn't it? Because that program, and we've obviously had the privilege of seeing it firsthand as well. I think it's really quite powerful and something you should be really proud of. So thank you for thinking of us when you were doing that. So just to finish up this pod, and before we say thank you and goodbye and all of that good stuff, we like to end on what we call the quick fire round. So we've got 4 questions for you. Dawn and I will ask them, and you just need to give us your first answer, the first thing that comes to mind. Okay. No prep for these ones. Is that all right?
Okay.
So the first one's the undo button. If you could ungive one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, work hard and you'll get noticed. I think it assumes the system's fair, and it's not. You need visibility and sponsorship. So that one.
Love that.
Okay. And is there any particular standard piece of advice that everybody gets that you think, do you know what, that's just complete and utter rubbish, just ignore it?
It's less so standard advice now, but it's the whole piece about kind of like, don't show your emotions at work stuff that's less so now, but it was for quite a long time. And it's just kind of that, it's all about professionalism. Well, no, it's not actually. It's about suppressing a little bit of who you are and not trusting your instincts. And so, yeah, it'd be that one. It'd be kind of like, actually, no, you do need to be able to show your emotions. And
I love that. We haven't had that yet. And I love that. That's brilliant.
Close to my heart. So the gain. What's something you gained from a failure that you now wouldn't trade for a success?
The learning earlier in my career where you need to bring people with you. I think when you start, you work on your own a lot. And then as you move through the ranks, you have to start bringing more people with you for things to be successful. And I learned that the hard way about 15 years ago. And it was absolutely gutting and devastating. And it was an awful lesson to learn. But I'm glad I learned it. So bring people with you.
I think we've all been in that situation at some point in our careers, right? Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, then the final one, Sam, your leadership style needs a walk-on song. What's playing?
Oh, God, is it bad? I can't get visions of Theresa May and Dancing Queen out of my head right now. Oh, God. Quite niche. I'm going to go Carly Simon, Let the River Run. The absolute iconic track from Working Girl. It's of a generation, but I think that inspired and empowered a generation of girls and young women in the 1980s. Without a doubt, I think it was asking for the taking, and I think we took it. So, yeah.
Love that.
Great choice.
And we love an unusual choice as well, don't we?
Oh, well, we're at the end. Thank you, Sam, for joining us on You Must Be Woking and for being so honest about the receipts of your success. You can find more about Sam and her organisation's work in the show notes.
And then join us for part 4 in the final episode of this International Women's Day mini-series where we'll be talking to Leslie Brodie. But until then, thanks, Sam, and it's bye from me.
Thank you very much.
And bye from me.
Thanks for watching and listening to You Must Be Woking, the podcast that cuts through the noise for all things diversity and inclusion. We pride ourselves on having the honest and sometimes tough conversations. So if you liked our discussions and content today, please hit the follow, like, and subscribe buttons. It really helps us to reach more listeners. And if you're feeling even more generous, why not leave us a review? It really is the best way for us to grow and help our content reach even more people.